Okay, here's installment number 2 on the Truetone radio phonograph combination. And the first part, you might recall that we repaired some power supply problems and replaced some other components that were out of that tolerance. And it only took us almost 30 minutes to discover that the secondary winding on the first IF transformer was open. What threw me off on that is the fact that the radio actually had some reception. Normally when the winding opens on an IF transformer, it kills all reception, but not in this case. Well, I dug around in an old junk Silvertone radio and found this IF transformer, and I've already replaced the old rotten lead wires on it, and it physically fits in this chassis without any modifications, so hopefully electrically it will work. And I also patched up this old speaker. It had some rips in the cone and an actual piece of the cone missing, so I just patched that up. Eventually I'll probably have it reconed, but for right now that should work okay. Well, sad to say that didn't help much. That's about the only station that comes in worth a crap. Okay, I'm going to try to align these trimmers and see if that helps anything. Well, I don't know quite how to tell you this, but I think there's something wrong with this IF transformer. I should have known not to remove something from some chassis that had been floating in a mud hole for the last 40 years. I've already located an issue. When I checked this transformer the first time, both windings read the same resistance of about 34 ohms. Now the primary winding's reading about 62 ohms, so that's not good. So it looks like I'm going to go dig further in the junk pile and try to find another IF transformer. Okay, doing more digging, I dug out this little Truetone, or should I say what's left of it. It's a shame this got so busted up, because this would be a nice radio if the cabinet and dial was in good shape, but since it's not, we're going to try one more time to get a usable IF transformer. At least this one doesn't look like it's had quite so much water in it. And here's IF transformer number 2, and the wires are actually in decent shape, so no need to replace the wiring. But of course that all won't matter if the windings are no good, so let's check that now. Okay, both windings read about 20 ohms, so let's see if this will physically fit on this chassis without any modifications. Wire it up, and we'll try again. Okay, IF transformer number 2 is installed. Let's see if it makes any difference. Okay, this is not too good either, so let me tweak the trimmers and see if I can get it better. Okay, I've tried tweaking trimmers, and it's as good as it gets for now, which is still nowhere near acceptable.
I thought we were sharing that. No.
I'm going to nickname this radio the religious radio, because that's the only station that
listening to the John Tesh radio
that comes in with any kind of decency. The only other thing I know to do to this radio is look real hard at the AVC circuit, but I'm almost at my wit's end as to what to do with this thing. It's too nice of a radio just to throw in the towel, but I'm about to run out of ideas here. Okay, I'm now applying a negative voltage to the AVC line, courtesy of my power supply. And as you can hear, it's having a positive effect, but not nearly enough of a positive effect.
Team here. My team's not in, so.
And notice what happens when I adjust the voltage.
And then in the third hour of the program, we've got 2 Supreme Court rules.
When the voltage gets too high, that kills our gain altogether.
Highly unusual, 9 to 0.
That seems to be our good spot.
One has to do with whether.
Well, number 1, it's still not perky enough, and number 2, I can't take this power supply with me everywhere the radio goes. So
to the Labor Relations Board, Obama appointed a bunch
something
of
is fouled up in the AVC circuit, I believe.
Congress was
Okay, I'm just pulling at straws now. I just disconnected the AVC line from the first IF transformer, simulating an open secondary winding, and as you can hear, we have weak audio. But whenever I touch the AVC connection back, it improves a little bit, but it's still not what it ought to be. And I'm serious, I'm at a loss as to what to do here. I've done about all I know to do to this radio. Everything checks good. Anything that was slightly amiss got replaced. I've traced the schematic, it looks good. The antenna checks good. I don't know what the heck to do here. Okay, I just did something, and I don't know why this had any effect on things, but it did. When I rewired this AC power switch, I had our AC line to ground capacitor from here to here. Originally this cap was right here, but I thought it would be a little bit neater to put it over here. Well, apparently it was picking up some, I don't know what was going on, but anyway, whenever I moved the capacitor back to this location on the chassis, the sensitivity got a little better, and the audio became a little less distorted, and I wasn't hearing that little background hum that I was hearing. Now, it's not where it needs to be yet, but it's a good bit further than where we were.
La pueden dejar en casa y esconderse a las redes sociales. Payment assistance, the Great Choice Loan.
May God rich your blessings.
Scripture Truth with Brother Joseph McDonald, Wednesday at 11 on Your Good Time Gospel Radio, 1390 AM and 93.1.
I'm still having to, I'm still having to crank the volume pretty high, but it's almost acceptable now.
Done. So, Bob, ready to be a star? In Meridian, next to CCP, in Hattiesburg, next to Academy Sports, online at Woodstock Furniture. See store for complete details.
Come get 4 amazing offers just in time for the 4th of July.
Giving him an opportunity to record the shave.
Gone are the days when mobile banking meant simply checking.
870-866-889. 0870, let me read a couple of text messages. I'm looking for...
I think that's WWL with the volume wide open.
That has been...
I don't know where that chirping's coming from. Probably some interference somewhere.
Johnny Peralta steps in. Been swinging the bat well. He's now 6 for his last 12 with that double that he did.
And this tuning capacitor needs to be cleaned.
And to learn more about Bank Amerideals, go to america.com/deals. That's your financial.
Okay, back on the Truetone radio, and yeah, it's amazing what the misplacement of one little capacitor can do. But anyway, now we need to do some housekeeping, if you will. We need to replace this rotten, cruddy cable on the dial light socket. In fact, off camera last night, I was attempting to tweak this trimmer with a screwdriver, and I accidentally touched this cable with a screwdriver, and sparks flew everywhere, and it blew the fuse in my AC power supply. So we want to go ahead and repair that problem. You see how frayed and crumbly this is, just an accident waiting to happen. Okay, here we are. Our center conductor. Solder is obviously in the center of the dial light socket, and it's a little tricky getting a soldering iron down in there to do that, but it can be done. And then, of course, the other lead solders to the outside of the socket, and you have to slip this insulating sleeve back over the socket. It's a little bit difficult to get off, and it's a little bit difficult to get back on, or will be a little difficult to get back on, but it has to be done. Okay, here we are ready to be reinstalled in the radio. I've checked the continuity, and everything's fine. There's no short to the mounting bracket. Obviously, we don't want any kind of short to the chassis there. Okay, here we are with everything soldered in place, and I also repaired one of the leads on the loop antenna with a small piece of heat shrink tubing, and I had to repair this lead on the volume control. Whenever I was removing it to check a component on it yesterday, this lead started crumbling, so I just slid a piece of heat shrink tubing over it, and that was that. Okay, this thing seems to be back to not behaving so well. I'm on the little hole-in-the-wall R&B station with the volume cranked all the way up, but I found a little better way to get some more gain out of this thing. Just add an electrolytic capacitor from the cathode to the output tube to ground. Okay, here we are back together, and it seems to be more sensitive when it's back together and the loop antenna is oriented in a different direction. We're still a little bit garbled.
Anybody remember her? You remember her? I despise President Bush. He's humiliating.
And I do eventually want to have this speaker reconed.
I'm a traitor of human and American principle.
Okay. Well, and you took that offer to the bank?
And you're thinking about the love that you just get sometimes.
Over to her bedside, thinking maybe I could bring her some sun.
That's about as good as I can get it. And here's the phonograph. And I guess that'll be our next order of business, is to get this going. It turns, but automatic functions are stuck. And of course the cartridge is dead. Well, it's got a little output, but not enough. And here's our old crystal cartridge that's dead as a doornail. I'm going to try to replace this with a modern ceramic cartridge, because it cost about $60 to have these rebuilt, plus a new stylus. And, you know, I can get a modern ceramic cartridge for around $20. So, but yeah, this amplifier is plenty stout now. But one thing that does concern me is this tone arm. It looks like it's sitting crooked on the record. Well, it may not be. I can't. Well, maybe it's okay. So I guess that'll about do it for this installment of this video. When I get some documentation on this record changer and get a good cartridge in hand, then we'll start on it. And before you have a fit about me dropping solder on this 78, this is a junk 78 that's cracked, so it really doesn't matter that I dropped solder on it. Well, guess what? The dial bulb blew out on us, so I'm going to have to open this back up and install a new bulb. And I'm still not quite happy with the little bit of garbled sound that's coming out of this thing, so I might want to check into that a little further. Okay, chassis back out. I've moved the cabinet out of the way. I have the loop antenna in the approximate position that it would be in inside the set. I have a permanent magnet speaker connected here. Of course, the old field coil speaker is still partially connected for the field coil, which also serves as a power supply filter choke. And it sounds a lot better now.
I was on my way home from work.
Oh, well, good. Even better. I'm keeping you company in traffic. All right, what's going on? How can I help?
And it may be next spring before you're able to do that.
Okay.
The business...
Okay, this R&B station is weak and garbled, but a little bit garbled, but it's weak on every radio, and I don't really think their signal is up to par.
Who have embraced...
That's the religious station.
The fact that it is fast-paced and non-stop, and, you know, there's not commercial breaks.
It's probably the best sounding station on the dial.
Playing video games like FIFA.
There's the Black Gospel station. It's a little bit slightly garbled too, but I think there again, that's probably due to more of the radio station than the radio.
The plane of FIFA. But my younger brother, who's in his early 20s, he's a huge video game soccer guy, and he keeps up with it, even though he never played.
And now I'm going to show you how to substitute a permanent magnet speaker for an older field coil speaker. You just can't do a swap because, like I said before, the field coil also serves as a filter choke in the power supply. So you have to substitute something else for that field coil. So generally what we do is measure the DC resistance of the coil and then take a power resistor of approximately the same resistance as the field coil and put in place of it. Now in radios with a power transformer, you generally need a resistor around 5 to 10 watts, sometimes 20 watts for the really big radios. But these AC-DC sets like this, you know, usually a 2-watt resistor will usually be fine. So now let's measure our field coil and see how many ohms it is. Okay, 350 ohms. Well, a resistor of exactly that value will be a little bit hard to find, so a 330 ohm will probably work just fine. Actually, we could probably go a little bit higher, into the 400s if we had to. It's not critical, just so it's in the ballpark. And it just so happens I have one 330 ohm 5-watt resistor, so that should be plenty healthy enough for this application. Okay, we have our power resistor attached to the plug where the field coil leads previously went. Now if this was something that I was planning on leaving permanent, I would have soldered this under the chassis, but one day I planned to have this original speaker reconed, and at that time I want to be able to put the original back in there without having to do much alteration, so this is the best way to do it here. And I don't anticipate this getting hot enough to hurt these wires here. That just happened to be what I had on hand. Now there's one other thing we might have to do. Like I said before, this coil served as a filter choke. This resistor does not have the same filtering properties that this choke has. So we might have a little bit more filter hum. Now if that happens, then we'll need to up the value of our filter capacitors that have previously been installed to compensate for that additional hum.
Years here. Oh, call me
okay, it's working okay, but we do have a little bit more filter hum, so we need to add some additional filter capacitance to what's already there to compensate for that. Okay, I decided to shun a 68 microfarad cap across the second filter capacitor, which is a 33 microfarad, and that helps considerably, although there's still some hum there, but it's, like I said, a lot better than it was. And yes, this looks hacked in, I know, but like I said before, this is only temporary. When I decide to have the original speaker reconed, I can remove this in about 30 seconds. And I do plan on having this reconed once I get some funds available. Because number one, a filter and choke does a lot better job of filtering hum than a filter capacitor and a resistor will. And number two, I've already checked the mounting of this speaker, and I'm going to have to do a little rigging to make this fit. And I don't like that either. I like things to be mounted the way they're supposed to be mounted from the factory. And if I can have this original speaker reconed and keep the original functionality, plus it not look like somebody hacked it up, then I'm all for it. But for right now, this will have to do.
You can count on it. There is no greater adventure you could ever get involved in than doing what God calls you to do and just waiting to see how He's going to show us.
Bryce Johnson.
Okay, maybe that'll sit there for a few seconds.
Hope you're doing great today. If you want to find out more information about this show, you can...
The other side, get your life back. 98% of your time needs to be spent on career, right?
But with that, thanks for enduring someone new. And it's a lot of fun to fill in for Andy. Everybody loves Andy Dean. He's probably the best radio guy on the planet.
Okay, I think the radio is about as good as we can get it. So now we need to start on the record changer. And like I said, at some point I'll send this speaker off and have it reconed.
Siri to the west. You have Iran to the east.
Okay, this is the 21st century version of black gospel music. You can understand why I don't care for modern day black gospel. Now I have some black gospel 78 RPM records that are quite listenable. But pretty much what comes across this station is not very listenable. Okay, here's the temporary speaker mounting. We were able to use one mounting hole, and the motor board won't allow the speaker to go back in there far enough to use the other hole, so we just have the nut just temporarily holding it in place. But that'll all change once I have the old speaker reconed.
The mortgage. Oh, Laura.
And here we are back together again. Yeah, this volume control is a little flaky, but...
Terrific advice for free from a housing counselor from the NFCC, the National Foundation for...
Barracuda Networks is no stranger to the cloud. In fact, all of programming. As we continue to improve, we thank you for your continued support. WMER has you covered with severe weather at once. Broadcasting live from Meridian, Mississippi. Good Time Gospel Radio, 1390 AM, WMER Meridian. WMER.
Okay, there you go. That ought to about do it for this installment. In the next installment, we'll probably work on the record changer, and we might even get that old speaker sent off and have it reconed. Okay, there you go. Thanks for watching, and hope you got something out of all of this mess.
The emblem of suffering and shame.